An art out of science is Johnny Ball, of course.
I've got no girlfriend.
Very spry.
All right.
Okay, Stuart Murph in Blackpool says, I suffer from hiccups a lot. What is the best way to get rid of them, please?
Well, hiccups, what happens is an intake of breath, and then for some reason, the throat closes up. You see?
Yeah.
And nobody knows why. Nobody knows why it happens, but it does happen. Often when people are eating and drinking and talking, so the body gets mixed up with what it's doing, and suddenly you get this spasm of hiccups. Cures, well, a shock is one way.
I didn't have hiccups. We'll probably get them now.
You've got them now, yeah. It's one way to stop it. Or you've got to get more oxygen in. How do you do that? Well, you prevent the oxygen by drinking out the wrong side of a glass.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
Oh, yes.
A lot of water.
And then you spill the water down.
Or breathing into a bag and then breathing the same air back in. In a bag, because then it's carbon dioxide, less oxygen, and the body says, hang on, stop messing about, I need oxygen, and stops the hiccups.
So good tips.
Thank you very much. Bob Howard from Beautiful Pool wants to know, where does the phrase, by the skin of my teeth, come from, please?
It's the Bible. It's the Bible. Job chapter 19, and in chapter 19, he's being slagged off by everybody. He said, my wife doesn't recognise my own breath. My kids ignore me. The servants turn around and walk away. And then he throws a joke in. He says, my bones are cleft to my flesh and my skin, and I'm escaped with the skin of my teeth. What he says is, come on, you're knocking the flesh off me. You give me such a go, all I've left is the skin of my teeth. It was a joke. And a Job joke. There you are. And that's what it was.
Thank you very much, Johnny.
There's not many jokes in the Bible.
And now, life is a cabaret, old chump. Sally Bowles from Sutton asks, if you were in a falling lift, would jumping in the air save you?
Well, what do you think? Come on.
Let's have a look.
When I first worked with Harry Seacombe, somebody remarked on the fact that he wasn't very tall. He said, no, an accident. When I was a lad, I was hit by a lift. And I thought, that would be a good idea, because my kids, Zoe, Nick and Dan, are all this height. And what I should have done when they were teenagers and growing up, I should have grabbed them by the ears and dropped them down a lift shaft. Boom! And kept them down to my height. Too late now. However, would you survive if you were going in a lift, the lift dropped down, would you survive by jumping in the air? Well, what do you think? Let's put it another way. Imagine you're in a car going 70 miles an hour. In the car, you feel absolutely relaxed, because the car's going 70, you're going 70, everything in it. So you're totally relaxed. What happens when it hits a brick wall? The car stops immediately, and you carry on at 70 miles an hour through the windscreen until you hit the brick wall and stop. Now, have you ever seen in a safety manual in a car a statement, if you're going to crash into a brick wall, put your hands on the windscreen, and in the last minute, do that? It wouldn't work. You'd have to push yourself at 70 miles an hour the other way to counteract the forward movement, so it wouldn't work. So going down the lift shaft, well, how do you know when you're dropping in the lift when you're nearing the bottom? You count the floors. Well, we start on the 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, couldn't possibly do it. So don't worry. The only thing that might save you is size. Is your size. And I'll tell you why. We know that if a horse falls down a mine shaft, because it's happened, the horse splatters. Ugh. If a man falls down a mine shaft, he bounces about a foot, right? But if a mouse falls down a mine shaft, because the weight of the body is so slight and there's a great furry area, he actually slows down. And the mouse will probably walk away if it fell down a mine shaft. So keep yourself trim. It's the only chance you've got. If you're ever in a lift and the lift goes down, all right? See you.
Who won't take no for an answer. So don't ask him, Caprice. Okay. It's Johnny Ball.
You like this bit because you get to...
Kelvin was later. Kelvin was later by about 20 years.
Is that when he built the hall?
Yes, I checked it.
You were right, there we go. Ian and Wrexham says, why do we touch wood for luck, please?
Right, remember a few weeks ago I talked about carrying the bride over the threshold to keep her away from the evil spirits in the ground? Well, the good spirits were in living things like trees, so you touch wood to be in contact with the good spirits.
So it's not a religious thing, so that's
very
great.
Ancient. Very
like that one, thank you very much.
Did you make these things up?
I do not make them up.
You go off there in your little room and you make them all up.
I know most of them, Terry. It's just all.
Would you like a drink?
I'd love it. No,
Give him rum. No rum.
He likes a drink. You like a drink?
No rum. Lisa from Bristol wants to know, why is it called sterling silver?
Sterling silver. Well, it's the value of the silver. It's the quantity. 92.5%. That's sterling silver. 92.5% pure. And that's where it is. But more silver is used in the photographic industry. And when you get a negative, a black negative, the black is created by silver, which is reacted to light. So there you are.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay.
I knew that.
And Paul from New Malden asks, when you see lightning, is it accurate to count how many seconds until you hear the thunder to find out how far away the storm is?
Well, I'll tell you about lightning and thunder. When you get a lightning strike, it starts by coming down. But the lightning strike is only electrons coming down, meeting the positive Earth. And what you get is a positive reaction coming up, much stronger. Actually, the strike coming up has got mass. That goes very, very fast indeed, and the two break the sound barrier, and you get thunder! Right. So what happens? Well, an aircraft, when it travels at the speed of sound, the sound can't get out of the way because it's getting at the speed of sound, so it all cramps up, and eventually you get a bang! And that's going through the sound barrier. But what happens here is the shock wave goes out in every direction and rebounds off the clouds, off the earth, and everywhere. It travels at a certain speed through air, you're right. But sound travels through... What? Oh, right. So, why don't I get to do underwear? That's what I want to know. The sound travels through metal 20 times faster through air. Through water, 4 times faster. Through air, 343 meters per second. That's how fast it travels. So, you're right. If you see a lightning flash, and you wait and start counting, after 3 seconds, the thunder will have traveled 1 kilometer. After 5 seconds, 1 mile. However, if you're very close, you'll find you're struck by lightning actually before you hear the thunder, and you'll be dead. Okay? Thank you very much.
We didn't have...
who is a household name across the country. And nobody knows him in the city, but we're delighted to welcome here, Johnny Hoover.
Can't be legal. It can't be legal. It can't be legal.
What
Getting those kids drunk, putting headphones on them, it cannot be legal.
Nick Wood from Hammersmith asks, why are people from Holland called Dutch and not Hollandish?
Well, Dutch comes from Deutsch, which means Germanic. Yes, the Germanic races, including the Lowlanders or the Nederlanders, so they were all included. But when we were at war with them 200 years ago, it all got very nasty, and we called them all kinds of names, including calling them Dutch. But now we don't treat it as derogatory, neither do they. So there you are. Dutch.
Thank you very much.
I ain't Dutch.
And that's from Duchess. That's from Duchess, short for Duchess.
Don't be such a know-all.
Here they go again! Samantha Jones from Dumfries wants to know, why does a spider not get stuck in his own web?
Spiders are incredible. The web, the spinneret can produce silk as thin as 1/12,000th of an inch. Right. But they can also produce thicker thread. They can produce dry thread or sticky thread. 40,000 different species, lots of different webs. So they can do lots of things with it. They're incredible. In Papua New Guinea, there's a spider, the orb spider, produces a web about 8 foot across between trees, and the natives can get it off the trees and go fishing with it and catch fish weighing up to a pound.
Oh, stop.
And the last thing is the spiders in this country every year eat more in weight than the weight of the population. 60 million people in this country.
Go away. Look, hang on. Oh, there's a little one on the carpet here.
Oh, they love it. You rotten son. Nasty person.
That's not true. He didn't do it. Adam Coates from Leeds wants to know, how did they split the atom without getting killed?
Without getting killed, I'll show you. Atoms are very small. An ordinary piece of paper might be 200,000 atoms thick. Wow. And the atom, the nucleus is very small indeed. If you blow up an atom so it's the size of a football stadium, the nucleus will be about the size of a golf ball. So all that energy, all the energy of the atom is in that tiny nucleus, which is why Einstein said E equals mc squared. The energy is enormous compared to the tiny mass of the nucleus of the atom. To make those two equal, he said you'd have to multiply this tiny mass by a huge number, the speed of light times itself, which is quite incredible. Now, what you were talking about, I think, was the first time they split the atom. Well, the first atom was split quite comfortably in this country by the Rutherford people who discovered the nucleus in this country. But it was in America in 1942 that they tried a chain reaction, and they took over a squash court and they lined it with lead, and they got the chain reaction. They weren't sure whether it would work or whether the chain reaction would be stoppable. But it was, and they knew they could control it. From that came the atom bomb and also nuclear power generation. But never compare the two. It's like comparing the biggest bonfire you can imagine with the heat from a glowworm's bum. All right? Because nuclear power generation is so incredibly safe, and it is splitting atoms. What you've got is this container with your atoms. Right? In a pool game, you smash them with the white ball and smash them apart. In a nuclear reactor, they actually split into smaller balls, and they still go rattling about. And each one knocks onto the others, and this is the chain reaction. But you control it all the time. How do you control it? You lower these extra cushions to the table, if you like, so that there's less and less movement, so you control precisely the actual reaction. So it's rather like having an oven on just gas mark 1. Continuously. So you've got just the right heat. The heat boils the water and turns to steam, and you get your generation. It's very efficient. Believe me, we should be using more nuclear power. 40% of our energy is nuclear power today. If we run it down, we'd have to use 2/3 as much fossil fuels as we use today. It's preposterous. We must have more nuclear power because it's so safe and reliable, and in the future will be the saviour of all of us.
Well done, Johnny. Wow. That's all for today. We've run out of time. Thanks to our guests, David Essex, to Philip Bly and Thierry Thomasin.
And John Humphries will be here, but now let's leave you with our Bahamian choir. We'll see you tomorrow.
A speeding bullet. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No! It's Johnny Ball!
Don't go far, don't go far. Come on, mate.
Johnny likes this bit because he always gets to sit next to the pretty girl.
I do. Not when the boyfriend's here.
Mary from North Shields, where does the expression giving someone the cold shoulder come from, please?
Well, there's lots of thoughts on this, but really it's from the coaching days. In the coaching days, the insiders were the people inside the coach, and they had inside information about when they got to the destination. And the outsiders were sticked on the outside, and they were the hangers-on, because they'd hang on to the coach, you see, or they'd nod off and fall off. And they were always last getting into the inns where they had meals, and they only had a short time to cook the meals. So the VIPs, the ones inside, the insiders, would get hot meals, and the others, they would get the cold shoulder. Oh, cold shoulder and mutton, because there wasn't time for anything else.
Thank you very much.
Hey, excellent.
That's what you get to sing when you had, isn't it?
Same kind of idea, yeah.
from Fulford wants to know, why do we have fingernails and toenails?
Why do you think? To stop your fingers from fraying at the ends. They're weapons. They're weapons. They strengthen your hands, and you can claw people's eyes out. You've tried it once, haven't you?
I knew the answer, actually.
Yes. Of course they are, and they're very. You can prise things open, and they're really very strong. We have such a soft life; we don't need them, you know. But animals do, and cats have got this wonderful quality of being able to withdraw them or put them out when they need them, and it's fantastic. Fingernails grow about 0.5 millimetre a day, and your toenails only 1/4 of that speed. But the longest nails, there was a fella, 1994, he cut them off, but each nail on his left hand was about that length. Five and a quarter meters, the combined length of 5 nails on one hand.
That is disgusting.
They grow after death, don't they? After in the coffin, people's toenails and fingers.
No, we did that the other week.
Yes.
Okay.
Please do watch the show, Lev. Alison from Southsea wants to know, why does the water in an Australian toilet flush away the opposite direction to an English toilet?
Well, does it? Well, have a look.
Well, explain.
Well, yes, it was found, and really it's been tested by scientists, and what they've had small bowls, big bowls, some 6 meters wide, perfectly round, and they've let the water settle for a day. They've had shallow water, they've had deep water, several meters deep. They keep the air off it so that it's not moved by drafts, they keep the sun off it, settle it for a day, and every test has shown, if the plug is in the middle, when you let it go, in the northern hemisphere it goes, which way? Anti-clockwise. In the southern, clockwise. Right? Why does it happen? Because the Earth is spinning, and it's spinning once every 24 hours. There are 25,000 miles around there. So here on the equator, everyone is travelling at 1,000 miles an hour, a little bit more. Now here where we live, we're only going at about 2/3 of that, 600, 700 miles an hour, and it's slower. The result of which, things are going faster here and slower there, and would you believe the southern edge of the bowl goes faster than the northern edge, and it goes in an anti-clockwise direction in the northern hemisphere. The tests show that it worked every single time. And in the southern hemisphere, it's the other way around. It's the other way. The northern bit goes the other way, and it's clockwise. And when they tried it in Kenya, on the equator, they found to their amazement, under all the tests, every test, that it always went straight down. There you are.
Thank you for that, Johnny.
That's all for today. Do you think she'd make a good dancer, though, Peter?
No, don't answer that.
Thanks to our guests, Peter Springfellow, Lucy Carr, Chris George and Emma Bache.
Please join us tomorrow when David Haig will be joining us, and we're going to now leave you Bastille Day with the Can-Can dancers.
Quick in Psychics, Mr. Johnny Ball!
Hey, Johnny.
It must be wonderful to be I've forgotten the word. What's the word? Legitimate.
Legitimate?
Yes, I wish I was legitimate. Right.
Simon from Stoke-on-Trent, is it true that you can make ice cubes from hot water quicker than cold water?
Incredible story. An English professor went to Africa, 40, 50 years ago, and was talking to the kids, and one kid asked this question. He said, why is it that warm water freezes quicker than cold? They said, no, nonsense, son, you got it wrong. Came home, and the African lad got his teacher to do the experiment, and they wrote to him in London and said, you're wrong, it actually does. And the professor found it was true, and it's because the energy that it spouted in taking the heat away concentrates the energy on releasing the whole lot, and it does freeze quicker. It's the actual energy of the whole thing.
Oh, thank you.
Right.
Anna from Penrith says, I read in the papers that the government are going to invest in more wind farms. Is this an effective way to produce electricity?
I've got to keep this very quiet. I could go on for hours. It is preposterous and absolutely disgraceful. No wind farm yet has ever produced more than 25% of its potential, because the wind doesn't blow for 1/3 of the time, and when it blows at night, it's no good because you can't store the electricity. The plans they have is to build 20 every week for 20 years, which is impossible, because each one, with its foundations, is twice as tall as Nelson's column. And the money to pay for that will be a total 50% from the government, which is you, the taxpayer, and the rest in tax breaks to the companies who are building them.
He's very passionate
and
about this one.
None of this will enable the closure of any ordinary power station. Not one. The whole thing will be viewed in 20 years' time as the most ridiculous thing, rather like 60s building. Shall I calm down now?
Yes, thank you very much, Johnny. Johnny Ball has spoken. Philip from Uxbridge, I'm a pilot. Can I convince my passengers my plane is supposed to wobble when it comes into land?
Of course it does. I will.
Hey!
Don't worry when a plane wobbles about, because it's bound to, because up there, there's air always blowing. The air is a fluid, and the plane is flying through it. So here's your plane, and it's flying along. All right, say it's going 400 miles an hour, and London is 400 miles away, so it's going to take an hour. But what happens if the wind's coming this way? Well, what they do is they make a calculation like this. The wind's coming this way, and say the wind's going at 100 miles an hour. Then you make this parallelogram. And the plane has to aim for the opposite corner of that parallelogram, because the wind's blowing it this way. If it went that way, it would finish, oops, it's fallen off. It would finish off up there. So the plane has to point that way, okay? And that way, it goes on that course and is blown on that course. But can you see that that length is longer than that? So it's going to arrive what? 10 minutes late, 10 minutes later than the hour? Yeah, it's going to arrive late. On the other hand, if the wind is coming from this direction, the wind is assisting the plane. The plane still has to swing, it's going to be blown that way, so it's got to point this way, but it points to there. And now, because the wind is slightly behind, it actually gets there perhaps 50 minutes instead of the hour. And that's how it works. When it's coming into land, then it's difficult, because the the closer you get to the ground, the more the air turbulence upsets it. So the aircraft is coming in and the wind is coming from anywhere. So it's coming from over here, he steers towards it. But he's got to get to the end of the runway, so he adjusts all the time. And he comes around here, then around here, and he adjusts. And then it bumps, and you'll go, oh! And then you hear the undercarriage going down, and it's like, oh, God, has it stuck? And then you're still worrying. And the whole thing is wavering about. And he's got to really line it up, coming in like this. And the wind's very strong in this direction. He's got to line it up, and it's very buffety now near the ground. In light aircraft, this is when you get sick, all right? But in a big aircraft, you just get worried. But the whole thing comes out, and as he hits the end of the runway, he's got to up at the last minute and straighten it out. And do they do it? Yes, every time. Why? Because flying in an aircraft is the safest way to fly. You know what I mean? And so all we've got to do is enjoy our holidays and enjoy the safety of the skies.
Thank you, Johnny. That's all we've got time for today. Thanks to David Haig.
Thank you.
I've got one quick question. Philip from Devon says, David, do you consider yourself a comic or a serious actor? We've had loads of people asking that question.
Really?
Yeah.
Both, hopefully.
You are both wonderfully. David Haig!
Go and see Hitchcock Blonde. Thank you to David, Priscilla Bayfus, Henry Obsfeld and Stephen Solly.
Mr. Garlic Ice Cream Man. Also, please join us tomorrow morning. Glenn Les Dennis will still be here with me, I'm delighted to say.
Absolutely.
11 o'clock live tomorrow morning, because we're going to be joined by Ben Elton. We will be asking him live on air why he made him become a turkey. We'll see you tomorrow at 11. Enjoy the sunshine. Bye-bye.
See you then. Bye. Always up for a grilling, Johnny Ball.
Johnny, pleasure, honour to meet you, mate.
That's a great hero, man. I think he's the most wonderful creator.
And he's brainy. You hear that, Chris?
Oh, Lord.
Yes,
Jonathan Redding asked,
I think I'm on here, Les.
do people who run to get out of the rain end up getting more or less wet than those who walk, please?
It's slightly daft on this, because it sort of works and it doesn't work. The rain's coming too fast for it to be effective. But in actual fact, when it rains, we do lean into the rain and the wind, and we try to get the same angle. And if you get the same angle as the rain, less will hit you. But because it's coming so fast, just the stuff that hits the front, and it doesn't work really, because the rain's coming too fast. The best way is run. Run like mad. The sooner you're out of the rain, the less wet you'll get.
Or use an umbrella.
I think.
Claire from Lewis wants to
Never
know,
thought of it.
why is the grass green, please?
Right, there's stuff called hemoglobin in the body, which takes the oxygen around the body, so produces the energy, right? Take the iron out of that and put magnesium into it, and you've got chlorophyll. And chlorophyll does it for plants. Takes the sun's energy and produces that as the energy for the plant. And so that's what chlorophyll is. 30, 40 years ago, do you remember this chlorophyll toothpaste and everything? Totally pointless, because you're not a plant, so chlorophyll for you is no good at all. However, it is good for the grasses. Now, there's lots of grasses, you see. There's normal lawn grass, but all the rices, the couscous, the wheats, all those, bamboo, that's also grass, grows 30 metres high. So they're all grasses. And the great advantage of them is they grow from the bottom up, like our fingernails. So you can cut the tops off and they'll grow again. So that's the great thing about grasses. And it's the greenness that gives them life and keeps them going. The dinosaurs never had grass, you know. So we couldn't have lived in dinosaur times because the grass hadn't developed then. So there you go.
Wow. Thank you very much. Okay. Anne from Sunderland, why does the road look all hazy in hot weather, please?
I'll tell you.
You'll explain.
Right, light is funny stuff. Light travels 186,000 miles per hour in a vacuum. But in other mediums, it does slow down, all right? For instance, in water, light slows down. What you get is refraction. If you look at the close-up of that stick, it seems all bent, like the rest of the show, really. However, in actual fact, that's refraction. So it bends by about, I don't know, the refraction index is about a quarter. It slows the speed down by about a quarter. But light is also bent in air, and especially when air changes temperature. So we've got air, normally hot air rises, but on very hot days, because the atmosphere is heated from the ground up, not directly from the sun, you get hot levels at the bottom, which are trying to get out, and it all starts to bubble about. And it really does, the air moves around. So you might on a normal day see a palm tree over there, but sometimes it gets hazy and you can't see it there. But you'll still see it, because light from the palm tree comes through this hot belt and is bent to your eye. But you think you're seeing it on that line. You don't know the line's bending, so you have the image of the palm tree being down there. And so sometimes you can see it upside down. Napoleon's troops saw this in the desert, thought the earth was coming to an end. You frequently see in roads reflective images, and that's the reflection of the sky. And you get that there, you see. So it's all due to the bending. Light bends everywhere. It even bends in space. People didn't believe that, but Einstein said it does. And he found there were two stars out in space, and he said, when the sun gets in the way, those two stars will move. Nobody believed him. They waited several years, and eventually the sun got in the way. And it appeared that the two stars were there and there, because the light from the stars was coming past the sun and bending because of gravity. So there you are. So light, pretty bent, really. There you go. Okay.
So that's all we have for today. Thanks to our guest, Ben Elton. Moon and Mr. Barbecue Jim Marks.
He's still downstairs barbecuing.
Marshmallows up his nose. It's Johnny Ball!
Marshmallows up your nose.
What's happening?
Why are there 18 holes in golf, just says James from Reading?
The home of golf is St Andrews. St Andrews originally had 22 holes, but they found 4 of them were a bit short, so they blended 4 into 8, finished up with 18. And then in 1858, I think, or 54, that's when they set down the rules, and that included the 18 holes they had, and that's why it's become standard.
Thank you. Okay. Why are there dimples in the golf balls, please, says Barbara from Blackpool?
So the people don't want to hurt them, you know, sort of, attractive to them. No, that's terrible, isn't it? What a terrible joke. Featheries was the first ball. Well, there were stone balls, then there were featheries, which were balls stuffed with feathers, which you could knock a long way, and then gutta percha. And gutta percha was very hard, sort of rubber, right? And they found the gutty balls actually used to loop. But they found as they got older, they flew further and straighter. And they realised the marks are having something to do with the turbulence of the air around them, so they started putting dimples in them, and that's how it started.
Thank you. Why do golfers need so many clubs, says Gary from Leeds? I agree.
Well, they don't, but I'll explain why they have them.
OK.
Right, here. Where did the clubs start? Well, first of all, they just had a stick that was a bit wider at one end, perhaps a walking stick they might have used. But eventually, they started to design clubs specifically for the game. And they found in Scotland that briars or thorns, thorn bushes, would grow out of the side of a bank and come out and then turn and grow up towards the sun. And they found if they cut that bit, that was a perfect bit for the head of the club. And they would put an ash shaft in American hickory, something like that. And that's what they did. And they found that was a very good shape, and that's how they developed that shape. But they developed all the clubs. For what reason? Well, they all do different things, you see. They all do different things. Max Miller, you remember the comedian Max Miller? He used to play with just a 7-iron at Wentworth Club and challenge anybody in the 50s to a £50 game. A lot of money in those days. And they found when they played about 6 holes, he hadn't dropped behind, and it's their game that fell apart despite all the clubs they had. What you've got is drivers with about an angle of 10 degrees, which send it a long way. And then the woods start to get shallower and shallower, but they're for long shots. Similarly, the irons, they start almost straight up, and they get more and more angled, and that sends the ball a different distance. But the truth of the matter is, golf is really all about control. It's the way you control the ball and the way you control it when you hit it. Now, at Sandwich, today and this weekend, control is going to be very important because the wind is blowing in every direction and they've got to keep control. So how do they do it? Well, the secret is this. You people on the front row, one of you is going to get this. I think the fellow there. Right, and it's only a plastic ball. What you have to do is make sure that you hit it to exactly where you want it to go. And that was terrible. But at rehearsals, I was very good. Yeah. There you are. Right, the other thing to remember is just like Beckham, you can bend it, and they will have to bend it into the wind or away from the wind or whatever. This one, what you do is see the club, and watch as I open it to there. Now the ball will go towards the camera, but go right. These are very soft balls, so they won't hurt anybody. Right. This one, Watch what happens. Instead of the club being square, I close it like that. And now it'll go to the left. And it'll go to the left. This one is going back where I started, because it's all about control. So if your husband comes home and says he's played terrible golf, he will blame it on the clubs. It's not the clubs, it's the golfer and the feel and touch of the game.
Thank you, Johnny.
Straight off his head.
Please join us after the break. I'm delighted to say the bad boy from Bad Girls, Jack.
And to meet the man, every science teacher's dream. The man with all the right formulas. Professor Johnny Ball!
You write that. Very good.
Johnny, I have no card to remind you of the questions. Do you remember them yourself?
Yeah, one question was
The kettle.
a kettle of fish.
Yes.
And it actually comes from a fine kettle of fish, a pretty kettle of fish. On the border country, Scotland and England, they used to catch salmon and have a picnic and throw the salmon straight into boiling water. And today we'd wrap it in foil and it would hold together, but it didn't. It used to break apart. Tasted gorgeous, but looked awful. So a fine kettle of fish. That's where that comes from.
Thank you very much, Johnny.
There you
Okay,
are.
now why do some people drive on the left and some people drive on the right?
Well, we
In
drive
some
on the
countries?
left and we're right. You see, when people got on horses, what they actually did... Oh, God, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were there. Oh, Neil Morris here. Hello, mate. I didn't know he was there.
Oh, you really were a Butlins redcoat, weren't you?
When they got on a horse, you got on from the left.
Right.
You always got on from the left, you see, and you drove, and your sword was here, or your weapon. Yes, no, the weapon... Yeah, anyway, the sword was here. Right? You've got me gagging again.
Sorry, I'm so sorry, Jimmy.
Or, if you met anybody, you shook hands with the right hand to show you had no weapon, so you did it all on the right. So travelling on the left and meeting people coming to the right is correct. But when Napoleon started conquering countries around Europe to show that they were Napoleonic, they belonged to him and had nothing to do with Britain, he made them go on the right. And when the Americans won the War of Independence...
American there, yes.
Yeah. Ben Franklin said, we shall do the same. We shall now travel on the right to show we're completely separate from Great Britain.
So there's lots of people going around with
Okay,
their
thank you
swords
very much.
Yeah.
And the third question was from Alison, who said she wanted to know, you know, the moon landing, it's 37 years ago today. Now, she wanted to know, a friend of hers says it was a hoax. Was it all a hoax, please?
Of course it wasn't, but I'll explain.
Sorry.
34 years ago, and I don't mind student magazines having a go at history and things like this, but really, if the kids believe it, that's when the problem starts. Of course they went to the moon, and there's lots of instances to prove it. Right, the moon, for instance, is very small. It's the same width as Australia. That's how big the moon is. It's very, very small indeed. Okay, and that's one thing to remember. And the moon has got no atmosphere. And as a result, when you're on the moon, the sky is black. It is black. It's not blue. It's the diffusion of light through the atmosphere that makes it blue on Earth, but it's black on the moon. They say that this flag is wagging about. We know it is supported, you see, by an arm across here to keep it up, but it's been folded up, and it's very light, and they've just pulled it out. And we have another picture here, and if you come in close to this one here, you will see that the flag is there. It's lit from a different place because the sun has moved around, but the flag is the same pattern. It's the same pattern. It's just hanging there. It's creased. That's all it is. The light, you can tell, you can also tell from the moon because the shadows are very stark. Because there's no atmosphere, the light doesn't deflect, and so you get very clear shadows. Sometimes, in some of the pictures, you get shadows from two directions, but that is earth shine. Shine from the earth. We know they landed there. We also know because they brought rock back from the moon, and when you cut moon rock, doesn't matter where you cut it, it always says moon.
Well, John.
Thank you, Johnny. Oh, Johnny. More questions, of course, tomorrow. See if you can stump him. Why don't you send us your questions to JB82222. There we go. OK, text them, please. Now, Danny McNulty, can you please ask my mum, who's in your audience, whether she's fed the fish? I'm her son, Danny, and I don't know whether to feed them or not. Where are we? Where's your mum? Where's Danny McNulty's mum? Danny McNulty... Hello, have you... Hello, what's your name? Kristen. Have you fed the fish? Yes. You have. Danny, you don't need to feed the fish. Thank you very much.
Right. They're actually 4 piranhas, so it'll be very handy if she's fed them, yes. Sling the cat in. Right, after the break...
No!
No, all in front, cat lovers, meow. Right, after the break, we will be giving someone a chance to win a fantastic home entertainment system in our competition, Kids in Headphones. And when are big breasts not a good thing?
Hey, Neil. Sorry, I couldn't resist. It was my turn that time.
Right.
Yes.
When they're on a man. Anyway... Get off. Anyway, we're going to meet that man. I'm only on this for one day now. Anyway, we're going to meet that man after the break. See you soon. Our very own diamond geezer, please welcome Johnny 18-Carat Ball.
Wow.
I couldn't resist.
Wasn't that incredible? There's a lovely story about the colour, is there not, about the man who cut it. He mapped it out over weeks and weeks and mapped it out and eventually got the chisel to hit it with a hammer to cut the diamond. But he didn't know whether it would shatter into dust or cut exactly where he'd aimed it. And he took the hammer and went, boom, and it broke perfectly. And he fainted like that, absolutely out.
I don't blame him. I feel slightly faint wearing all of that. Wow, beautiful stuff. OK, Sarah in Penrith, please. Why do snails start dissolving when you pour salt on them?
Oh, it's terrible. You see, snails need... Oh, I ate... Right, when I was seven, I was in a pub, a children's room in a pub in Bristol, near Bristol, and a fellow went in the garden, came out with a house snail, and went... and put it on his tongue, and it crawled down his throat. And when it was at the back, he went, they're bloody delicious, he said. Right? 20 years ago, I was in France and I was offered raw sea snails, live sea snails, and I ate one.
Oh, no.
It was delicious. It was gorgeous. However, snails need mucus, and it's around them, especially on the foot, and they crawl along. And they secrete this mucus all the time. It stops anything sticking to them. You put salt on them. You know you put salt on wine when you spill it on the carpet, it absorbs all the moisture. It just sucks it out. Sucks the mucus off them. And it creates such an effect in the body that their body reacts and starts to bubble all over the place. It's quite hideous. The death of a snail. Thank you very much. And it is awful. So, you know, don't kill snails like that. But they just react and it poisons them.
Or unless you're Johnny, eat them live. Alistair in Barnsley, why do we go wrinkly when we stay in the bath too long? Well,
you get in a hot bath and it's too hot and the body's got to maintain its temperature, so it's got to get rid of the heat. Which it can't, it's just getting hotter all the time. So it withdraws all the blood from the capillaries just under the skin. It pulls them out. It pulls the blood away so strongly that actually the skin wrinkles. As it keeps doing it, keeps trying to keep the temperature down. I'm too hot, I want, you know, and it keeps working to keep the temperature down. So eventually you wrinkle. You find your feet, the pads don't wrinkle, but around the pads it all wrinkles up. And it's keeping the blood away from the heat to keep you cool. When you get out, you recover very quickly.
Thank you very much. And the third question, please, James in West London. Why have there been letters on telephone digits even before texting, please?
Well, texting's very new. Let me explain.
You'll explain!
Yes. In my first job, when I was 16, we had phones like this. They were always black, but they were always like this, and they were in call boxes, and they were wonderful. But what I used to do at lunchtime is I used to put elastic bands around them, black elastic bands, nobody could see them. And then from across the office, I'd see them come back from lunch, wait till they got really working, and then I'd ring them. And they'd pick the phone up. And I laughed at that. It was a joke. It's like a joke. All right. But these phones had numbers and also letters. And you can see that the letters are actually more pronounced than the numbers. There's ABC. Oh, one is on its own. Then two has got ABC, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, and N. No Q, sometimes Q's with the O, and no Z. And that's how it worked out. And the great thing about it was, you knew people's numbers. They just tell you. All you have to remember is the name and 4 figures. My mate was at Chiswick 2446. I'm pretty certain it was. And Chiswick was actually Chiswick 244 today. Well, an idiot board here. 244 today, but it was lovely. People in London, of course, used to ring the police and dial Whitehall 1212. And Whitehall, the old New Scotland Yard, is right across the river there. Still there today. But you always dial Whitehall 1212. People had posh addresses. Mayfair you could have. Remember Dial M for Murder? That was Maida Vale was the number. But all this went when 1961, and they started to use numbers. They also brought in the new plastic phones like this, and these were terrible. Look, from this beautiful piece of work with this new modern one, when you tried to dial, it moved all over the desk. A fellow once rang a number and said, "Is that 777-777-7?" And the fellow said, "Yeah." He said, "Could you ring 999 and tell them I've got me finger stuck in the number 7?" These were terrible, these phones, but we eventually went to the pad. The other thing about the pad, it's very efficient, but have you noticed the calculator pad is the other way around? It's upside down. How did that happen? It just happened because the people who developed this put a number at the bottom, started with a 1, and never thought of matching it to a telephone. So this developed differently, and the pad is the other way up. But there we are. Okay.
Johnny! Ronaldo Ball! After the break, folks, the Zista del Sol to the man whose wages are costing a fortune, Senor Johnny Ball!
5 minutes, 28 seconds.
Stop
there you
now.
are.
Dean and Hayes wants to know, does the appendix actually do anything?
No, it doesn't. It does in rabbits, because they eat a lot of cellulose, and they still use it. But in man, it's an old thing, and it's not used anymore. People think the appendicitis with fruit stones getting in, it's nothing to do with that, it's bacteria, but it only happens in 2 people in 1,000. And it's because we have more fibre in our diet today, so there's less appendicitis.
Thank you very much. Ian, or unless you on the no-carb diet. Ian from Wentisbury says, where did sirloin get its name, please?
Sirloin. Well, some people say it's Henry VIII, some people say it was James I, some people say it was Charles II, who named it sirloin. None of those. It's from the French. Sir means on top of or above. Sirloin, top side of loin. That's what it means. And all those stories about calling it sirloin have come afterwards.
Thank you very much.
Sirloin.
And Paul in London, did you hear his his West Country accent for his French there? Sirloin.
Sirloin.
Paul in London wants to know, how does nature know how to camouflage animals, please?
Well, I'll show you.
Thank you!
If I put this jacket on, and this over my head, you can't see me, can you? I've disappeared completely. Camouflage. Well, it doesn't work like that. It works totally different. Chameleons are called chameleons because from the word camouflage. And they are very good at camouflaging themselves, and they can take on the colour of the twigs or the leaves they're on. We had a picture of one, but you wouldn't have seen it anyway, so it doesn't matter. But some moths are quite good at doing that. Some moths 150 years ago were the colour of lichen or lichen and would perch on roofs and nobody could see them. Then, when it got very sooty about 50 years ago, 75 years ago, they turned black. And now they're back to their grey colour again. But we don't know whether it's the black ones dying out and the grey ones living through, you see. But the air is cleaner than it's ever been. Camouflage is very clever stuff. If you wanted to camouflage a horse, would you paint it black and white stripes? Of course you wouldn't, but it works for the zebra because in a herd, a lion is totally confused by the stripes even when they're moving and galloping. So he will rather chase an easier prey. And zebras are the only horse species that have survived in Africa because of their camouflage. That camouflage. And many creatures are camouflaged, but it's not just the camouflage they develop with. Giraffes were camouflaged very well. But they've grown. Now, why have they changed their shape? They've changed their shape to survive, and that's the secret of it all. They grew long legs and long necks. They grew them both together, otherwise they'd have fallen over. And now they can reach leaves at the top of the tree. They have food no other creature can reach. That's why they survive. So camouflage is part of it, but all the other things go into helping the survival of the fittest.
Thanks, Johnny. Welcome, Johnny. Tomorrow, coming up after the break, Danny McCall and his...
From fake nipples to a genuine clever dick, it's Johnny Ball!
Here's Johnny! Thank you very much. I'm wearing mine. I'm wearing mine.
And very nice they look.
Thank you very much.
Got a beautiful girl for you to sit next to.
Look at that. From Wigan.
From Wigan.
And I'm from Bolton.
Yeah.
And my family came from West Orton in between the two.
Oh.
There you are.
Oh, okay.
You could be speaking to your daughter. Right, go on.
Jason in Rochester wants to know, where does the expression to cut the mustard come from, please?
Nobody knows, and it's really very difficult to sort out. Must is young wine, and the mustard was cabbage, hot bits of cabbage. That's how they make mustard. However, O. Henry, in 1907, American author, wrote, well, this proposition exactly cut the mustard. Nobody knows where it came from, but that was the first one. But cutting a dash smarting, being smart dressing. And muster was what the forces did when they were inspected. You came up for muster and you were inspected. And if you were the top dog at the muster, you cut the muster. And so I think that's where the root is. Cut the muster, cut the muster.
Thank you very much. Sharon from Newmarket asks, why do we cry when we're upset?
Now, this is very difficult to explain. What comes out is toxins that are sort of manganese compounds, and they found that people with mental illnesses often have a build-up of manganese compounds, so we're getting rid of that. But why do we cry? There are basic emotions when we're born is love, fear and rage, and we build on those, and that's what we develop as kids. And at first we smile at everybody because they smile back, but suddenly kids actually get scared of strangers. Hello, how are you? And they get scared. They sort of cry. Now, what happens is this, it's the mental fear builds, and it's very difficult for the body to control it. So you cry so the body shares the mental distress. So if you like, you're passing it on. So when you laugh till you cry, you're so emotionally upset, you've got to let the body share it. So you start to cry and your body shares the emotion. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
And Francis from Bollington wants to know, why are clouds different shapes?
Well, I'll show you.
Thank you.
Right. Clouds, you see clouds forming some days. You can actually see them when a plane flies across and leaves clouds behind it. And what you've got with the clouds, this is a joke. I've been told I've got 30 seconds to do this, and I don't believe it. You've got cirrus clouds that are very light here, and they build up and become altocumulus clouds. And this is in a warm front where you've got warm air, and they get thicker. They get thicker and thicker, and eventually you get nimbostratus clouds, and they, compressed by the warm front, shed some rain. But usually it's not too bad. Right, on a cold front, it's different again. What you get is cumulus building up, and it eventually forms cumulonimbus. And what you've got is air currents going up the middle. And as the clouds are drawn up the middle, they turn to rain. You get this great anvil top. But this is your torrential rain. With a cold front, this is when you really get a dousing. And that's it. Cheers.
Thank you, Johnny.
Who's always on the crest of a brainwave. Here's Johnny.
No, you don't want to sit there.
Yeah, you can sit there.
Oh, I see.
Oh, yeah. Cheers, cheers.
That's all right. Cheers.
Yeah. Do you want a sip of wine?
I'd love
have
a
a sip, have a sip. There we are.
Would you like a sip of wine?
Cheap. Cheap.
No, that's turning red wine into white, you know.
Right. Very nice.
Oh, I don't know. Anyway, so have you got our answers? Donna from Gateshead, where does the expression dressed up to the nines come?
Well, this is the nearest we've come to not being able to answer a question.
Oh! This is a first,
The
Johnny.
97th question, it's the nearest we've come. I'll tell you why. There were 9 muses, the magical 9, so there are lots of thoughts of 9. Nice as 9pence, we know about, right? But dressed up to the 9s, we can't get the 9s, we don't know where it came from. Rabbie Burns used it first, dressed up to the 9s, that's the first. And about 150 years ago, one of the British regiments was the 99th Athlete's Foot. No, Regiment of Foot. And they, the 99th Foot, were very smart, so dressing as well as them, but it doesn't sound right to me.
No, did I
No, it
talk
sounds
about
older.
a number in a street,
It's
like,
older,
was
well,
it 9
up to the
Park
9.
Lane?
Well,
So
it
you
could have
dressed
been
up to
9
the
out of
9.
10. Dressed up to the 9 is nearly best.
That's
But
true.
we really don't know. That's the first time
Oh,
I've said
well
we
done
don't
for
know.
stumping, Johnny.
So if you know at home, then let us know about that one, okay?
Right. How do you make white chocolate?
But it's very simple. When you get the cocoa bean, it's still moist, you know, and fresh. And then you crush it, and you crush the oil out of it. And the oil is white. And that is cocoa butter. Then that's done actually on the plantation. Then the beans come over here, and then you roast them and grind them, you know, just how you like. Everybody does it a different way. And that's when you get your brown cocoa. And that's what makes the chocolate. If you just use the cocoa butter, you get white chocolate. But it's really bitter, so you're going to use milk and lots of sugar.
Lovely, thank you
Essential.
very much. Last question, please.
Last question. Casey from Tadworth says, how does solar power work?
Well, I'll show you. All our our energy on Earth comes from the sun. And if you wait 260 million years, then you might get more energy because it takes that long to produce our coal, our oil, our gas, and things like that. However, if you want it instantaneously, then there's lots of ways of doing it. It's about 40 years ago now, somebody invented the photovoltaic cell. It's 2 layers of silicon, and with the 2 layers of silicon, you've got impurities in one, so there's extra electrons in one of them. When you heat it up, the electrons jump from one to the other, and moving electrons is electricity. This is at least 20 years old, and it should work. If I switch it on, if I can find one, it should still work. On, there we are. And it still works with photovoltaic cells. You know what I said. Right, now, you can do all kinds of things. You can have solar panels on your roof, and they can heat water pipes underneath, or gas pipes, or even oil pipes, so you can heat lots of things. If you really focus the sun's light, you can get more energy. And what I've got here is a reflection, I hope, of the light. But if I curve it, you get a bigger reflection of the light. There you are.
Yeah.
But if you do that, you get a lot of heat. And in France, once again, about 30 years ago, they had massive arrays of reflectors, mirrors, that reflect onto this mirror, which focuses onto this tower, and they could achieve temperatures of 3,000 degrees, which is enough to melt metal. But really, it's still not very inefficient. It's inefficient for some things, but it's very difficult for power. Also, we're quite north from the equator, so solar power in this country, not too good, except that you realise that level with Hull and Liverpool, you've got a spa, a German spa, and that runs a whole hotel, but they need 2 full football pitches of panels. The greatest one, it would be if we put solar panels in space. There's no weather, so that you could have them very flimsy and very light, and they could collect a lot of energy, which you could focus into a microwave and send it to Earth. But that's in the future. But here in this country, in Cambridge, they're building a bus station with lots of solar cells which will produce electricity, which will split water, and the hydrogen will drive the buses that will go from Cambridge to an industrial estate and back. And the only pollution you'll get from that is at each stop, the bus will leave a little puddle of water, just like it's cocked its leg on the way down the road. There you go.
Thank you,
Please welcome back our chancer with the answers. Here's Johnny.
We already have a poll. Well, not me,
I beg your
but
pardon?
Zoe and Norman have their poll in their bedroom.
Really?
No.
And they, honestly, and they have parties and all their mates get on it. They see how many people they get up the pole, nobody touching the floor. How many people they get up the floor, only one person touching the floor. And Norman and Zoe both mount the pole via a trampoline. Doing, ow, and go round, yeah.
Oh.
And the only trouble, Norman did his ankle doing that. But,
Yeah, that's fireman can do it though.
I could never be a fireman.
Fireman?
Oh no,
They
bring
must be
tears to
really
the eyes, that.
they can only go down, though.
Yes.
Can they? Oh, really?
Let's leave that. Thank you very much.
And the next
Zoe
answer
and
is-
Norm, good morning.
What did you say?
Nothing.
Here's your question. Philippa from Carnarvon wanted to know, hemorrhoid cream helps reduce wrinkles on your face. Is this true?
It might make your face look like your bum, but it's not true at all.
Well, I
In
know
fact,
some models that do it.
it's rubbish. You see, all these creams that say rub it on and you'll feel your skin go tighter, you will feel the skin go tighter, but it doesn't make the skin go tighter. You just feel that, because what hemorrhoid cream has is a soother, a cooler to soothe it down, and a little bit of anaesthetic. And the anaesthetic takes the pain away, so your hemorrhoids go back, rather...
So it's a shrinker, isn't it?
Yeah, so they go back in, you see, and that's all it does.
That's
all
all
it will
to get
do to
rid
your
of your hemorrhoids.
So you think that may well, yes, or stretch them out a bit. Yeah,
Let's move on to question number
Adam
2.
Hell from Leicester asks, why should we not look a gift horse in the mouth?
Well, it's when you're given any gift, you shouldn't question the quality. So you find a horse's age by its teeth. And you shouldn't look at gift horse in the mouth. Oh, sheep.
I thought it had something to do with a Trojan horse or something like that.
No,
Nothing
gift
to do
horse.
with
So accept it as a gift and be gracious about it. Yes.
Thank you very much.
that.
And
Right,
question
and
number 3.
Paul from Bow wanted to know, why has a baby got more bones than an adult?
Well, it has, and I'll show you why. We're very lucky here because we've got 2 teaching hospitals, Guy's and St Thomas's, right across the road. So we've got this fella. Hello. Right. I ain't got no body. Here you are. This is a female. You can tell the mouth's open. Now, a skeleton, a human skeleton has about 206 bones. The femur is the longest one. That's the thigh bone. Rattling good chap, this. Right? Okay. Then you've got the humerus. That's called the humerus. And it's because it's called the humerus that if you bash the end of it, it hurts, and it's called the funny bone, and it ain't funny. But there you are. About 206 bones. So why is it a baby has about 305? Well, we'll start with the skull. If you look at the skull, this is plastic, not a real skeleton, but you can see the joins of the pieces of the skull. When a baby is born, these are not joined at all. They're floating about, so the baby can compress during birth, including the shoulders and the hips. The whole thing can flex as a baby is born for the baby's safety. And when they're born, then these bits start to blend together. You remember the back of the baby's head is very tender. There's no bone at all there when it's born. Slowly it melts together. So all these bones gel into others. But they're not all bones when they're a baby. You see, basically the hard bit is calcium, and then you've got a fibrous bit inside, collagen. But also you've got, I'm sorry, I'm groping for my words here. You see, you've got cartilage at the end of the bones, and it's the cartilage that grows, right? But when a baby is born, it's almost all cartilage. Hasn't turned to bone yet, so it's flexible. If you want to see a bit of cartilage, next time you carve a chicken, you'll find the breastbone, little plastic end, and that's cartilage, and that's very flexible. Sharks, no bones, all cartilage. As we grow up, our bones blend together, and the only cartilage left is around here, which enables the rib cage to flex, and that's it. That's what happens. So a baby all the time is growing, and the bones are gelling together and making it very solid and growing. When we stop growing, the bones still recharge. You've got osteoclasts and osteoblasts, and some of them feed the bones, and the other actually replenish bone. When you get old, because you see a skeleton replaces in about 20 years. And when you get old, it sort of replenishes the bone, but doesn't grow new bone, and your bones get thinner and start to get very brittle. So look after your bones. They're the only ones you've got. All right, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. That's interesting. That's really... There's Johnny!
How good is that?
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. But, oh, I've got to tell you, last night, 1 o'clock in the morning, I got it in bed.
Google whacking.
No.
What did you get in bed?
What did you get in bed?
The answer to yesterday's question. You remember yesterday's question?
That stumped you.
Up, dressed to the nines.
Dressed to the nines, yes.
And I remember what it was. This was made by my dad about 1943. I'm a terrible anorak. But this is 99 dominoes. And there's your 99. And you can't get any more glitter on it. Dressed to the nines. Full of glitter. I think that's the answer. And I just to death. It came
Dominoes, well. Here are today's questions, which you will not... Have you all managed to beat him today? Well, let's find out. Here's Johnny! Yes.
Now, why do we cross our fingers?
Why do we cross our
Christian. In history, it's been against the rules to be a Christian. And you haven't been able to make the sign of the cross. So people under pressure have actually denied they were Christian and crossed their fingers behind their backs.
There you are. I didn't
Sign of
know
the
that.
cross.
That's brilliant.
Hey, what?
Right.
Hey!
Right, Jane from Winchester wanted to know, why do people have accents?
Well, this is fascinating. It's often to do with the language, but it starts by being a baby. You copy your kid, your parents, your parents.
Yes.
Dada, mama,
Yeah,
say dada.
yeah.
So you copy. And when you copy, they smile. So you realise, oh, this is the way to learn, and you get rewards with the smile. So you start to learn by copying. So if you live in an area where people talk in a certain accent, you will talk in that accent. Now, the language can determine the accent. Things like nasal sounds, perhaps in Liverpool or in Glasgow, could be from the pollution in the air in times, which they had suffered from sinus problems. So it could be that. But the accents depend on where you live. Once you're 30, you won't develop an accent. But before 30, beware where you live, you'll develop the accent. So, accents can be very soft, like in Southern Ireland, where it's ever so soft, and the whole mouth is very relaxed.
Right.
Whereas in Northern Ireland, it's much tighter and much stronger, like that. And then in Scotland, you get like that. The very thing's very guttural in the lowlands. Very guttural, like that. And then when you get to Liverpool, you're all right, whack, and it's all up here, and it's very much the mouth, and it's the shape of the mouth. And down. Now, when you get to Birmingham, it's like that.
Birmingham's like that.
It's the shape of the mouth. And in London, of course, it's all mouth, isn't it? And the mouth is wagging about like that. And that's it.
I've got it, yeah.
Depends where you live.
It's very funny because we had a Japanese au pair, and my little boy started to talk. Bled. You say bled instead of bread. And he spoke, yeah.
Oh, blood and butter.
Yes. Right, Grant from Montrose asked, how much does it cost to make a penny?
Well, in 2000, we made 10 million quids worth of pennies, 1 billion pennies. Now, if you're making them that fast, and that you can make them for less than a penny. But that doesn't really matter, because you make £20 notes as well, and they probably cost less than a penny to make, because you make so many. So it doesn't matter how much they cost. In the old days, a gold coin was worth its weight in gold. But now, coins and notes are worth their face value only. So you're on a promise when you got a £20 note. The promise is that the bank will honour that £20 note. So it doesn't matter how much they pay. I'll tell you one thing, the Royal Mint does make a profit in us losing our money or us buying money and paying ridiculous money for special coins, things like that.
There you go.
So they make a profit.
That's how you make it. Right. Now, how does soap get rid of stains? Robert from Wareham.
I know, we'll get rid of some stains. I'll show you. Right. It was Isaac Newton who studied soap bubbles and found that if you can make one and catch it, you find when you look at it, you see rainbow colours. And the rainbow colours descend down the bubble and it gets thinner and eventually it breaks. And that's the soap on the surface of the water coming down. And when there's just water there, it breaks. He discovered that. So soap forms a very thin film. Right. Another scientist was Benjamin Franklin. Remember the lightning man? Now, when he was in Clapham, in England, he poured a teaspoonful of oil, olive oil, on a pond, and there was a little bit of wind, so it's all getting knocked about. And here you see the oils falling in globules. But with a bit of movement, he found when he came back that the teaspoonful of oil had covered over half an acre of lake. And from that now we can work out the actual thickness of an individual molecule by the way it spreads. So there you are. Now separating them. Well, detergents are very unusual. They're a bit like ducks, but they're like ducks that don't duck their head in the water. Imagine this duck is here on water. Its bum likes water, but its head doesn't. So it never tips up. On the other hand, its head likes oil, right? So what happens is your ducks, your detergent, forms a line on the top of the water. And it might take air as the other side, and its head will say, I'm happy with air. As long as I'm not touching water, I'm all right. So it forms a film on the top. But if there's anything else, like oil, then the oil, it separates. Now, it can separate them like that with a film between the oil, and then you can just mop it up. Or they can form circles and trap the oil in the middle. And that's how we get rid of oil slicks, okay? On the other hand, your little ducks can join at the head and separate water from actual stuff that's soluble in water, like mud, you see. And that way, you can still separate the mud from the water. And the great thing about a detergent, as you know, no matter how rough the stain, once you get that film between the two, you can just wipe it off and clean it. And there you are, as clear as mud, I think. Thank you very much.
You can whistle, won't you? You just were. You can do it. If you want to whistle, go for it, Bradley.
I was going to whistle, yeah, I must admit. I was so... That was great.
Isn't it?
I love stuff like that. I've years and years been watching John, and we've just been talking about his recent tours and stuff like that. We went around the theatre. It's just fantastic. It's great.
It's good.
It's so fascinating.
Because it's fun. You learn because it's fun, and that's what's great about it. Yeah?
Absolutely.
You're a lovely man.
And you're
A pizza is mine! Oh, here's Johnny!
Me.
Oh, yum, yum.
Me.
Look at you.
I'd love it.
Okay, Johnny, now your 3 questions.
Stolen food's always the best. When you
I
nick
know.
it.
Got it.
Before you eat your pizza.
Oh, yeah. John Farnham from Say What So. What does mead mean? What does mead mean as in Temple Meads? You know,
Well,
sorry, darling, sorry.
Mead, it's a meadow, short for meadow. And lots of English place names have got an indication of where they are. Vale or dale means valley, weald means uplands, wold means moorland, downs is chalk, hills.
Oh, yeah.
So all these names.
Harrow Weald.
Harrow Weald, yes, yes, it's, yes.
Oh, he's so lovely.
Thank you, Mark.
Napkins.
Oh, with the chin.
Karen from Hull asked, what is yeast? Well, we've seen
We've seen it. Right. Yeast is a fungus. It's a very small, single-cell fungus, and it loves to eat sugar and turns it into alcohol, so it's great. So what happens? You've got the carbon dioxide cycle. Carbon dioxide in the air is absorbed by your grains, like your barleys, as they grow and turn into carbohydrate. We make bread out of those, right? And the bread we eat, and it turns into sugar as we mix it with oxygen. And the sugar gives us energy, and out comes carbon dioxide again. And that's the cycle. So you see, cycle, the carbon dioxide is vital to it. Now, if your bread, you let it ferment, and the yeast, which were originally 4,000 years ago, were windblown, and the yeast acted upon it and turned the sugars into alcohol, and they realised they could make beer. And suddenly, you got a new meaning to food and life and relaxation and everything. And so it's very beneficial. And so that's what they do. Now, brewers, when they make wine or beer, they have to keep the yeast out, the windblown yeast, so they cover it all up. So they apply the yeast precisely, so they get the right mix and they get the right beers and the right wines.
Lovely, thank you very much. Next question, number 3.
Last question. Rick S. from Leicester. How is sound put on a vinyl record?
Well, I'll show you. Now, sound is amazing stuff. It's conducted by all kinds of things, and it's conducted through solids. Try this at home. A spoon and a piece of string. Stick the string into your ears like that and just clang it against the table. And what you hear, it sounds like Big Ben chiming. It's very, very loud. And what you're getting is the sound conducting through the string, through your ears, through your bones, actually, and you hear the sound. And that's the principle. Now, Thomas Alva Edison, in 1877, thought about all this. And he got a cylinder, right? And he put a silver foil, a metal foil, on the cylinder so he could turn it round. And they got a needle, right? And he attached the needle to a cone, and he made the whole thing balance, like that. And he found when he turned the silver, the needle scratched the silver, it's catching, but it scratched it and left a groove. So then he went, hello! Okay? And then he put the needle back at the beginning of the scratch and he listened and he heard, hello! Believe me, he did. So then he started working on it. Now that's what he did. Amazingly, after this question was asked, we realized that in the studio all the time we had the Edison standard phonograph. And there it is. And this comes back, this is about 1903, 4, 5, I would say. And this has been in the studio all the time. And this is it. He produced this, put this there. This is a screw, so it goes along very gradually. And when he turned it, he then tried, and he went, Mary had a little lamb. And then when he wound it back, it came back, Mary had a little lamb. From there, he said, not from here, from there. All right. And he produced the first recording song. Now, how does it work? The groove, if you look under a microscope, is about that shape. But according to the sound, with a bigger vibration, you get more pressure from the sound. A deeper groove for louder sounds. But also the side of the groove is also affected by all the cadences, all the different sounds. So if an orchestra is playing, the flutes will be making a mark up here, the trumpets down here, the oboes down here, and you get all these sounds in the variances in that groove. On the needle, when it comes back, the playing needle doesn't cut it, it just rubs along it and picks up all these variances, and that produces a sound. Quite incredible. That's how I studied.
Thank you very much.
Now, one other thing.
Oh.
Now, you then might ask, well, that's vinyl, and vinyl's old hat, so how do CDs and DVDs work? That's another time, but it's coming up very soon. Okay. Hey, thank you.
By the way, Emma from New Malden, rose petals, they're not rose petals. I'll tell you after the break. Welcome, Johnny Ball.
Johnny Ball.
Whoa!
Hello, Johnny.
Here we are. How are you? This man, actually, we met in a radio studio, and I learned from him that they've been talking about using me on the show, and that's how this all started. So thank you very much. Hello, man.
Hello, nice to meet you.
You're wonderful.
Okay, you do sound alike, you and John. It's scary. So, Jeff from Chislehurst says, why is Joe 90 called Joe 90, please?
Right, Joe 90 was created in 1968 by the Andersons, and of course, there were 89 World Intelligence Network agents. 89. They needed the 90th. And the boffin created Big Rat. Brain input. Oh, it's going. I can't remember. Anyway, it stood for something. Brain input galvanoscope. Right? So what they could do, they could focus him, and he could absorb anybody else's brain from around the world just for one episode, just for one problem, and solve it. And that was Joe 90. And he's still around today because he eventually became the ginger hair, the glasses. None other than Chris Evans. Yes, still alive. Joe 90. It's brain power. That's what it is. Brain power. Brain power.
You did very well there, John. You'll work again next week.
Possibly.
Mandy from Chester. How do magic birthday candles work, please?
Well, they work like this. When you blow them out, what they've got. Well, you've got this little grains of magnesium.
Was for me.
Now, when it's burning, the paraffin wax is going up the wick, and as a result, the oxygen can't get to the magnesium. But it should. You're not going to work, are you? Yes, it is going to work, but it's been a little long time.
Oh, no.
Now, what happens when you blow it out? The oxygen, the paraffin wax solidifies. The oxygen gets back to the magnesium, and it lights again. And it lights again.
There's your birthday cake, Terry.
And it lights again.
That's it.
To stop it lighting, you do that.
Yeah. Brian from Southport. Happy birthday for yesterday, Terry. Brian from Southport. How does my satellite dish receive TV pictures, and why do I get my pictures slightly later than someone watching through a normal area, please?
Well, I'll show ya. The first satellite dish was invented by Archimedes 2,000 years ago. This is Syracuse, right? And he kept the Romans out of Syracuse for 2 years when he was in his 60s, about the same age as Tell and me. Right, but eventually they attacked...
going on about it?
Eventually they attacked by sea, but he was ready for them. He got all his soldiers to polish the shields. There was the sun. The sun, oops, came down here, and the rays of the sun hit the shields and were focused. They focused them onto the ship caught fire, and the whole lot turned around and sailed away. And he produced the first satellite dish because if all these men had been in a line, they'd have had to be in a curved line, so wherever the sun hit it, that line would have reflected to the same place. Your aerial is like that. You notice your aerial on the side of your house, your satellite aerial, is almost pointing at the horizon. Why is that? Well, the receiver's down here, and the information's coming in lines like that, and wherever it hits the dish, it reflects into there. So it's like a telescope because it's taking all that information and condensing it into there. Now, how does it work? Why don't you have to move the aerial? Right. Arthur C. Clarke, who wrote 2001, a space film or something, book. Anyway, he said that if you put a satellite 30,000 kilometers, 13,000 miles from the Earth, it will go around the Earth once every 24 hours. But the Earth goes around once every 24 hours, so the satellite will stay in the same place. That's why you focus your aerial on the satellite and it'll always pick it up. Now, why the delay? Some people have television in the kitchen and one in the lounge, and one has got the satellites, and it's because of the time it takes to get up to the satellite and down again. That's the delay in time. Okay? Thank you very much.
Still waiting.
Johnny Pole.
Help yourself, John. Good man.
Oh, yeah.
There we are. A
Very
nice
good
coffee
cup
with
of coffee.
2 straws for both of you. You
I'm
can
not
share.
sure. I'm not sure about that.
Share.
I'll manage with that.
Would you like a little sherry in your coffee?
You're not bothered.
Jane from Lancashire asks, where does the phrase scraping the bottom of the barrel come from, please?
In the seafaring days, when sail was king, everything travelled in the barrel. Everything. All food. So salt beef, salt fish, apples, potatoes, everything was in barrels.
Is this where the joke comes from? It's your turn in the barrel.
That comes later. Thank you very much. And people would take stuff from the barrel, but and if they didn't like it, they throw it back and get a nicer piece, you see. Plus the fact that you get weevils and all kinds of grubs eating.
Delicious.
Plus the fact that you get the rats getting in there and leaving their droppings before they got out.
Oh, lovely.
So when you got to the bottom of the barrel, you really were scraping it because it was terrible and foul and awful, and there we are.
Thank you very much.
Well done.
Matthew from South London. I was in Bath and noticed that a lot of windows in the old house were bricked up. Why is this?
In his bath. Oh, right. 1700-ish. King George... William III, I think it was. Anyway, so they decided we want more tax, just like governments today. We want another way of finding tax. And every house that had more than 6 windows had to pay tax on the extra windows. So people who had 7 thought, hang on, we could manage by bricking one up. So they would brick one up. Now, the same daylight robbery, we think or thought came from there, but we find that, no, that's not true. That was much before with highwaymen who, the bounders, were brazen enough to rob people in daylight.
Stand and deliver.
That's fantastic. I've always wanted
Stand on your liver.
Thank you very much. That's amazing.
Stand on your
Angela
foot.
from Huddersfield wants to know, is the electricity in our body really electricity?
Well, it is and it isn't, and I'd better explain.
Yay!
In the 1790s, Luigi Galvani from Bologna was getting old, and his wife was in bed with a dicky ticker. So he thought, I'll get her some frog's legs. That'll have her hopping around in no time. Hopping around. Whoa. So, he had the frog's legs on the table, and he also had an electrostatic generator, because he was a scientist. And as he turned it, he found the frog's legs twitched. They twitched. And he realised that it was the static electricity that caused them to twitch. So he thought, well, hang on, they're twitching now, but they're not on the frog. When they were on the frog, they twitched. So there must be an electrical generator in the frog. So there must be an electrical generator inside us that makes us leap about. Wow, he said, I've discovered animal electricity. And he was wrong. Because this was a battery. You've got a metal plate and a metal knife, different metals, and the salt solution that the frog's legs were kept in created a battery. So the spark allowed a charge to make the frog's legs jump. However, what he discovered was he was right in a way, because electrical impulses do make us move about. And I'll show you how. I need a leg. Can I have a leg? Hello. Can I borrow your leg? Right. If you hit a leg...
Hard time, this poor child.
If you hit a leg here... it jumps. We'll do it again. And what's happening there is obviously this is stretching the tendon. And the tendon sends a signal down the nerve, and that goes around the spine and comes back to the top of this muscle here and pulls it, and the leg jumps. Thank you very much. Round of applause for the leg. Thank you very much. So there is a signal passing through the nerve, but it's not like electricity going through a copper wire. It's different. Within the nerve, you've got a membrane. On each side, you've got different chemicals. And it's a bit like a battery. You've got a plus side and a minus side. Now, when a signal comes down, what happens is enough chemical crosses through the membrane to equalize that charge. And that gives a knock-on effect, because when charges move, they draw charges from other sources. So you get a knock-on effect, and the signal travels down the nerve. At the end of the nerve, that pushes out a little bit of chemical, which is electrically charged. It's like a bolt of lightning, a tiny bolt of lightning, which hits the muscle, and the muscle goes and contracts. That's how it works. So that's how the body works. And all our movements are controlled by these chemical reactions. It is amazing. But of course, our brain is also electrical, and that doesn't move about. But there are 30 billion brain cells, and with little electrical impulses connecting them all together. The possible connections... Well, if you wrote it out in a number, the number would be how long? It would stretch from the Earth to the Moon 13 times. That's how long the number would be of the electrical connections in your brain. So we're an electrical machine, just as Galvani said with his frog's legs. So, yeah.
Painting your bedroom yellow, it could mean that your marriage is on the rocks.
Ridiculous.
That's what we're doing. But what's Johnny Ball doing?
Oh!
Something give me an eye. I've got to do that. What am I doing? Questions today. Phil from Bristol wants to know, where can I buy a fairground? Got everything, have you? Yeah, OK, Phil. All right, we'll find out. Sarah from York wants to know, why and how do you get seedless fruit? Good question. And Malcolm from Taunton, he wants to know, why can you not put metal in a microwave? Well, you can. At your peril. See you later.
Yes. Thank you, Jonathan. Vital questions all. Now it's time to beat the heat. Whoa. Thank you.
Oh, give me a
They're all for me.
Oh,
I
wonderful,
love them.
wonderful.
Okay, Johnny Ball.
How are you, mate?
That was great.
I think...
I love those on here.
Yeah.
There you are,
Oh,
son.
cheers, mate. Freddie Flintoff. And I say, Freddie Flintoff says, I am a good batsman.
Yeah.
How about that? You can't say better than that, can you?
No.
Thank you very much.
Hitesh in Bradford asks, where does the word underdog come from, please?
Planks. Making planks. In the old days when they made planks, they dug a pit and they put the planks over the pit and they had a very long saw. The fellow on the top was saw like that. The fellow underneath was saw like that, and all the shavings would fall on him, and he was the underdog. The other fellow was the top dog. That was it. Plank.
Are you
Thank
making
you.
these things
Mary
up?
and
I
Taunton.
never make anything up.
Mary and Taunton
I
wants to
don't believe a
know,
word
why
of
do we clink glasses when proposing a toast?
Why do we clink glasses? Well, in the days when...
Excuse me, that's his red wine. The white wine's yours.
Yeah, the white shows, mate.
Get off.
Can I have them both?
No. Oh, yeah.
In the day, all right. In the days where it was dangerous, and one way to bump people off was to poison them. You know, people were always worried. So what would you do is pour the wine out in front of them, raise your glasses, and clink.
Cheers.
You see, and that was to say, look, I'm drinking the same stuff. The fact that it's a different colour's got nothing to do with it, and that was one way. However, the other feeling is this: you can see the wine, you can smell the wine. You can taste and feel the wine. You can't hear it, but when you clink, you can hear it.
Thank
There
you.
are.
Tina
One of
in
those.
Sunderland says,
Good answer.
with all the forest fires in Europe and America at the moment, could we destroy all our forests?
I don't think we could, but we must make sure we don't, and I'll explain why.
Thank you.
Forest fires hardly ever occur in tropical rainforest because it's all too humid and too damp. But we did have forest fires in Indonesia 6 years ago, and they were devastating. They started on farmed land, not in the rainforest. But that caused the El Nino effect, which affected South America the following year, and the effects of that is still being found in our weather today. Maybe part of the cause for the heat wave we're having today. So forest fires, you've got to be careful of. But you can normally get them in temperate areas like southern Australia, south of France this year, and the United States. And they are devastating, but they're essential. They're absolutely essential. You've actually got to have fires. I'm just going to like this. Right, come on. Right. The thing about wood, when it burns, it catches fire. But it scorches at first, and that scorching makes the wood harder as it protects itself from the fire. So if the fire's going quickly through a forest, then a lot of the mature trees can still survive, and it's okay. But when you go into a forest, you see lots of dead wood, old branches, leaves, seeds, and they are forming a tinderbox. And if they're not got rid of, they will stifle the ground and also cause a fire at some time or other. So you've got to have fires. And trees are prepared for this. So the giant redwoods in America are fireproof. The growth is between the bark and the bulk of the tree. That's where the growth is, up there. And the bark of the giant redwood is fireproof. The bristlecone pines last 5,000 years, and they twist their branches as they grow. And that twisting stops bugs getting in, moisture getting in, and fire getting in. They're fireproof. And many fir trees, their seeds will only germinate after a fire. So fire is essential to forest. So in the USA Forestry Commission now burn controlledly forests every year, and they're going to get up to a state where they'll be burning 2,000 square miles of forest every year for the sake of the forest, because it all grows back. So there we are. Forest fires are essential, but not by accident. They can be very dangerous. Do be careful when the hot weather's about with your forests, okay? Cheers!
The chancer with the answers. It's old Johnny Ball. Jenny's in charge of the questions. Jenny is the questionnaire.
You're doing well.
I know, cheers. Right, here we go, Johnny.
Yes.
Right, Jeffrey from Barnsley asks, is there a reason why some football teams have square corner flags and some teams have triangular ones?
Yes, there is, and I didn't know that. Most of them have oblong, squarish sort of corner flags. But those who have won the FA Cup can have triangular ones.
Get off.
So Liverpool,
Get
all
out
around
of
the ground. Middlesbrough, still square. See?
Okay, right, okay.
Well,
It's
like my
amazing.
fire.
Don't sound so interested.
I'm sorry, some of these questions...
Right, OK, Alex from Guildford's got a really good one. Why do they dim the cabin lights when a plane is taking off or landing at night?
You might want to know this. It's for your security. I have to say that the safest way to fly are in aeroplanes and all that, but it really is very, very safe, OK. However, if there's going to be an accident, and it hasn't happened when you took off, then where's it going to be when you land, like up against a mountain or something like that? But the chances are very slim. But they dim the lights at night so that you will get your eyes accustomed to the dark, because if there is a problem, the lights are liable to go out. And if you got accustomed to dim light, you should fare better in the emergency. That won't happen. It won't happen.
Well, that's a comfort for all of you out there about to go on your summer holidays.
I talked to a pilot the other day who didn't know that, but he did point out that he, as well as passengers, not allowed to take nail scissors or nail files.
Tweezers or,
yeah. And the pilot can't take them either.
So he's got very bushy eyebrows.
But when he gets, and when he gets into his cabin, what's on the wall? An axe. But it's for your own safety.
Right.
But no, you frighten the life out of every nervous
No, it's very safe. It's very safe. Trust me, it's safe.
OK, and Mel from Bracknell says, I watched a Bond film at the weekend in which James Bond used a silencer on his gun. How does a gun silencer work?
Well, this is going to frighten me to death because of those fellas across the road, but I'll explain. There seriously are armed guards across there, and I hope they don't see this. Right, but what you get on a James Bond film, when he fires the gun, you get out. Of course they won't let me use bullets. Even blanks in here. But that's what you get. When you put the silencer on, you get... Notice the difference? It's pretty pointless, isn't it, without bullets? However, what you get is an explosion in here, and that explosion is very violent because it pushes the bullet out there at tremendous speed. And the force is coming out, but until the bullet's gone out, not much comes out. And then suddenly you get the whole sound. Bang! A bit like that, okay. But when you put the silencer on, what you're doing is enlarging the chamber of sound, the chamber of sound. It's a much bigger volume. So when the bullet gets to there, you've got a much bigger volume, much more expansion, and you get put, or something like that, you see. The same thing happens with a balloon. You blow. If you can find the aperture, you get squeaks. The thinner the aperture, the higher the squeak. So little guns go bap, and big guns go bop. Okay, like that. If you let the thing go like that, it flies away. But if you release the air with a bit of a shock, you get a bang! And that's what it's all about. Musical instruments, they're very good at getting the sound, and they usually have a horn at the end, and that helps just dissipate the sound around. But with this thing, you don't want to do that. And with a car, you don't want to do that. So the car engine is creating a lot of noise, but you have the baffle, the exhaust box. And in the exhaust box, what happens is the air that's coming out of the engine and the noise gets knocked around several corners. There are all kinds of baffles, so this very loud noise here, as you know when one falls off, is very, very soft at the end. So that's the secret, that's the secret. But the great thing is, it's pointless anyway, because when they make a film, they don't do any of that. What they tend to do is go, and they put the sound on afterwards. Pointless, really. Okay, here we are!
Today, Johnny Ball has frightened all flyers and ruined every James Bond movie.
Hey, maybe...
If you want to take a swipe at Ball, text JB. Come along from one rabbit to another rabbiter. Come along, son. Johnny Ball!
Hello, Johnny.
I loved all that.
I loved it. From Bolton, you see, grand food from Bolton. The black puddings he didn't bring on because I'm taking the black puddings home.
Right.
And you eat those raw. You don't cook black pudding. You just slice it, make sandwiches out of it. It is wonderful.
Okay.
Okay, black pudding.
Right. Am I allowed to drink as well,
I
by the
always
way?
knew you weren't the full shilling. How can you eat black pudding raw?
Oh, yeah, well, it's cooked. It's just like salami.
That's what Northerners
It's
do,
cooked.
and the French. Right, Graham from Winchester wants to know, why do I stick my tongue out when I'm concentrating?
My dad always thought my dad did do it yourself, lots to do it yourself. My mum wasn't interested. So, look, hey!
I'm there.
I'm there.
I'm sorry, you're going too fast for all of us.
it's
no,
all
my dad, always, when he was screwing the cabinets and things, everything, he was always talking about and then concentration. It's an aid to concentration, and people need this aid to concentration. People hold the temples when they're concentrating. People, when they're praying, you know, you tense the body. You give the body something to do. So that the mind can concentrate. And that's what it's all about, concentration.
Right. Okay. Claire from Much Haddon says, I've just stopped smoking. Why do I have a sore throat?
Good question.
Well, it could be that the smoke was sort of anaesthetised your throat and coated the throat. Now that's gone, your throat's very sensitive and sore. On the other hand, you see, some people actually find that if they've got nasal problems and throat problems, the odd cigar actually helps it, you see.
Does it?
So it can.
Doesn't help me, it makes me
so
cough.
it's very difficult. There's a thing I want
Brings
to
up the
mention.
phlegm.
I thought you had a pipe.
I'm sure it was the...
Sorry.
I'm sure that it'll heal up. The thing I want to mention about this, because can I mention something about this?
Yeah,
this
go on.
non-smoking. I'm allowed to show these labels on this packet, but not the packet. So you can't know whose cigarettes they are. But I'm allowed to show these labels. And I'm not a smoker. I don't support smoking, but I do support democracy. And what I'm saying is there's a total anti-smoking lobby and no defence of the smoker, and yet there are thousands, if not millions of smokers around the world, and they do not give up. Why? We're not addressing why mentally do they smoke? Why do they need it? It's not just because it's addictive, it's much more than that. Young people smoke because it calms them, and they feel it gives them a little poise and calm. So there's something. So it's undemocratic to be totally anti something.
I think you've got your own series there. Well
Thank
done.
you very much.
Okay, and Jenny from Sale asks, does quicksand really exist, or is it only something you see in the movies?
It nearly took me, mum. Oh, and I'll show you why.
Oh, do this thing.
Right, rock is ground down over years and years until it forms sand. And sand grains can be any shape at all, but eventually they become round. And when sand grains become round, they stay round for millions and millions of years. And that's how they stay. And because they're round, you can't sort of form a straight wodge of it. Water can always get in between it. So what you have, tide comes in and leaves water, and as the tide recedes and the water is flowing back, you very often find puddles on the top of the sand and little rivulets, and that's where the kids play. But the danger is that you very often got underwater streams under the sand, and this water is leaking in, so what you've got is saturated sand. That is quicksand. My mother went down to about that depth. The dog went for help, and they got her out. How does it work? Well, it's very difficult to recreate a beach with a quicksand in here, but we have got this foot bath, and if I switch it on, you will find that we can make the sand vibrate. Now, it's dried out a lot. This is very heavy, and if I put it on the sand, because of the vibration, you'll find, on a good day, it will sink. What's happened is it's solidified as we've left it. But if you look here, and it is happening, trust me, it's happening. There, the boat goes down because there's slight vibration. And here is a ping pong ball that we buried earlier, and it's coming up because it's lighter. Now that's what happens. So you've got this saturated sand, and because it's saturated and you're more dense than it, you will sink in it. What happens if you do sink in it? Don't panic. That's the secret. Don't panic. Because you see, you will float, and it's a watery substance, so you will float eventually. And as you go down, remember not to panic. Put your arms out and stay still. It is the movement about that will drag you under. Stay still, and you will survive, as long as you don't panic.